AI is being used in scientific research, and some of it is going very, very wrong. We're talking about papers getting published with completely made up references, with AI generated images that make no biological sense, and even entire paragraphs copied from ChatGPT. And the most interesting part is that these papers are making it through peer review, a process that is supposed to check the quality of the paper and stop bad science. So today we're going to look at real examples of AI being used very badly in academia, and more importantly, what these cases say about the world of science now that we have AI. And if you're new here, we are the Struggling Scientists, and we make episodes to help scientists and academics make their lives just a little bit easier, including how to actually use AI tools without completely ruining your research. Okay, we have to start with this one because it's pretty unbelievable. This paper was published in a legit Elsevier journal and later retracted. Now let's zoom into the introduction. It says, certainly, here is an introduction for your topic. Well, that is literally ChatGPT. And you're not looking at a draft, you're not looking at notes, you are looking at a final published article. ChatGPT wrote it and nobody actually checked it until it actually got picked up by people online. Someone who also posted on Reddit noticed it, contacted the journal, and a couple of months later it was retracted. And turns out it wasn't just the ChatGPT line where it went wrong. They later found out that the paper also contained images that were copied from another paper, had quite a bit of overlap in the text with another paper, and of course it's very bad use of AI that we have seen. So it wasn't just a mistake, this was a complete breakdown of the process. And that's where it gets interesting. This didn't just slip past one person, this slipped past the authors, the reviewers, and the journal. So the real question isn't just why did they use ChatGPT like this, it is how did this paper make it all the way through the process. Now, to be clear, using AI in academic writing is not inherently a problem. Most major journals, like for example the publisher Nature, actually allow the use of AI tools for things like improving language clarity and readability. But, and here is the key part, as an author, you are fully responsible for everything that ends up in a paper. That means checking your references, checking your figures, and definitely making sure your text is correct and not like this. You can absolutely use AI to improve your writing, but just copy-pasting ChatGPT output isn't it. Now we won't go into detail in this video, but if you are more interested in how to actually properly use AI, you can also check out our masterclass in AI in academia at thestrugglingscientist.com/masterclassai. Now, unfortunately, this paper was far from the worst example.
So this next case wasn't discovered by reviewers, it was discovered by a hospital librarian. It all started with a clinician who was reading a paper and just couldn't find a couple of the references in that paper. So they asked their hospital librarian for some help. And that's where things started to fall apart. Jessica Waite, a librarian at the Royal Hallamshire Hospital in England, started to check the references and immediately noticed something strange. These were relatively recent papers, the kind that you would normally easily find online. Yet, they weren't there. So she checked the full reference list and found out that 12 out of the 14 references just didn't exist. And what really stood out to her was that maybe one or two can slip through, but this was a preposterous number. So the author was contacted and said the wrong draft had been submitted, and sent a new reference list, which sounds reassuring, but even in that version, wait for it, 16 out of the 21 references were fake. And this is exactly the issue that you get with AI-generated references. They look real, they're formatted correctly, but they aren't actually tied to real sources. The author later explained that this happened during drafting, while using different tools, including AI, and that she had suffered a traumatic brain injury which affected things like attention to detail and organization. But even with that context, this still made it through peer review and into a published paper, and was only caught when someone tried to actually use the references. And that's where this becomes a real problem, because this wasn't just an academic exercise. This was a paper being used to inform clinical practice, and if clinicians can't rely on the references, that's a serious issue. And unfortunately, this isn't even the strangest example.
And then we have this paper, and this one didn't slip quietly through the cracks. This one went viral. A peer-reviewed paper published in a Frontiers journal featured a rat with some interesting anatomical features larger than its own body. And honestly, that is just the beginning. The figure had labels like testom cells, or the cyclet, or eolate surgomogdar, which I'm pretty sure are not scientific terms. One diagram was supposed to show the Jack-Stott pathway, but looked more like a donut with sprinkles. And another figure looked like a pizza with blue tomatoes. Obviously, not at all scientifically correct. Now, these weren't just bad drawings, they were AI generated images, generated with Midjourney. And the authors did disclose this. And despite that, this paper passed peer review. It was reviewed in just a couple of weeks, published, and nobody caught the fact that it made no biological sense. Until people on social media saw it and were like, what? So naturally, people contacted the journal, and the response was, yeah, but the authors did declare this, so it is within our guidelines of AI use. And it gets better, because the journal actually discloses who reviews certain papers. So they were contacted, and one of them responded. And he said, well, I did notice it and say something about it, but other than that, it's the journal's responsibility to pick it up. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because the reviewers point at the journal, and the journal points at the guidelines, and in the end, nobody is responsible for actual scientific accuracy. So after massive backlash, the paper was retracted, after only 3 days of being published online. And yes, it is easy to laugh at this paper, but that is not really the point. Because if something this obvious made it through peer review, then what about all the fake AI generated content that isn't as obvious? Because those papers don't go viral, they just get cited. And that's where this stops being funny and starts being a real problem.
So after all of this, fake references, copy-pasted AI text, and whatever that rat was, it's kind of easy to laugh, but in all honesty, this is a problem. Because at the end of the day, these papers didn't just appear online. They went through journals, they went through editors, and they went through peer review. And if journals don't tighten up their process, they're going to lose something very important: trust. But it's not just the journals. As an author, you are responsible for what you publish. AI can help you write, AI can help you brainstorm, AI can even help you structure your ideas. However, AI cannot take responsibility for your science. If your name is on the paper, then the mistakes are yours too. And this is exactly where we think AI gets misunderstood in academia. Because the problem isn't that people are using AI, it's how they're using it. And if you actually want to learn how to use AI properly without ending up in one of these videos, we go into that in more detail with our AI for Academics Masterclass, link in the description. And at the end of the day, we're not here to shame anyone. We're just here to make academic life a little bit less of a struggle. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what's the wildest use of AI you've seen in academia. We'll see you in the next one. Bye!